These are the 5 critical things that you need to know about buying a house in Halifax in 2026. I am joined, of course, as always, by Alex Lavender, certified mortgage broker based out of Halifax. And Alex, the people want to know, what trends are you seeing? How is the Halifax real estate market shifting in 2026?
It's interesting. It's an interesting market for sure because we do have a lot of cranes in the sky. There's a lot of units being built. A lot of those are rental units, believe it or not, unlike places in Toronto and Vancouver where they built condo units. A lot of these are for rent and not for ownership. And immigration has slowed down as well, and interprovincial migration has slowed down as well. So we've seen some price appreciation over the last year, and I think that that's going to continue into next year as well. I mean, there's still demand for homes here. We still have a lot of stability in prices. We really didn't see those peaks and valleys like other places in Canada saw, because prices were very low to start with here, and they're high now. But I mean, just the adjust. If you're looking at it in comparison to other provinces, it's lower than those provinces. So I think with the outlook of interest rates being stable, and just the stability of the market as a whole, I think it's just going to be a relatively stable year. I think they're predicting a slight increase in home sales and a small increase in purchase price.
Yeah, I remember, I met a lot of people that had moved to Nova Scotia from BC, from Ontario, even from Alberta. And now I feel like the sentiment in Canada is changing a little bit, where I hear of a lot of people are moving to places like Alberta specifically. So are
Mhm.
you seeing a bit of like a decline of that interprovincial people wanting to move to Nova Scotia still, or is that still strong?
I think we're seeing houses, sit on the market a little bit longer than they did before, but it's all about the price points. I think, if you're in the 400 to $600,000 price point, that's kind of the last of the entry level homes that are available. Like you don't see much below 400,000 anymore. So that's still quite competitive if it's, a good property in a good area. When you start getting above that 650 up to 9, it's a little slower. And when you get a million plus, it's just a select group of buyers, really. So those can tend to, sit for a lot longer as well, unless it's a really desirable property. So it's hard to say exactly without seeing the stats, but I think we're seeing, yeah, less people coming into the province, probably some people that are leaving the province, but I still think there's a shortage of housing, and I think it's just stability all around.
And the second critical thing that someone needs to know about buying a house in Halifax is, and really, Alex, I need you to explain this to us, which is getting a mortgage pre-approval does not mean you're guaranteed to get that. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Can you explain that?
Pre-approvals,
How does that work?
yeah, yeah. So a pre-approval is a snapshot in time. So essentially, you could be pre-approved today, and then you could go out and buy, a brand new, fully loaded Ford F-150 truck with payments of $1,400 a month, and you completely throw away your pre-approval. And we see it. Um, some of these car payments are huge, and people, oh, I didn't think that buying a car would affect my ability to buy a home, or switching jobs, or now I went from a stable job as a nurse, and I'm a travel nurse now, which is a completely different source of income and stability. So no, a pre-approval is a snapshot in time of how things look today. The lender doesn't do the full underwriting, so they don't review all of the documents yet, especially when we send in a rate hold. So we're using the information that's available today, and then when you go for the full approval, that's when the lender reviews everything. Because at the end of the day, the full approval can't be done until you have a property in mind, or an offer on a property, sorry, because that also affects the lender's decision. I've had clients that have an incredible pre-approval, like 100%, couldn't see there ever being an issue, and they get declined because of the property. The property is a fixer-upper. There's holes in the drywall, flooring all ripped up, some mold, and I'm sure with a great vision, it's going to be something beautiful. But in the lender's eyes, that's an unmarketable property, and even with that pre-approval, they can't buy that home. So I always recommend that clients put in a finance condition in their purchase and sale agreement just to be safe, even if they are super solid pre-approved, just in case something comes up with the property. But a pre-approval is still extremely important because you don't want to be making an offer on $1 million home when you can only afford 400,000 or qualify for 400,000 or didn't realize the payments were that much or that property taxes or this or all the closing costs. So pre-approval is great just to have a conversation and just be like, these are all the expenses with buying a home. You know, a lot of the time clients come in and they say, well, I've got 20 grand, I've got 5% down, I can buy a $400,000 house. They don't realize these closing costs are expensive. So pre-approval is great to have a conversation and make sure you can qualify, make sure the payments are where you want them to be, and make sure that you have enough money to cover everything. And then if that all checks out, then go shop for a house. But don't make any changes until you have the keys to your new home.
I think that's great advice. And on that topic of closing costs, what are the closing costs like for homes in Nova Scotia, and how does it compare to places like Ontario and BC, which I've heard are also really high?
Yeah, so I tell people to budget for about 3% of the house price to cover for closing costs. Could be a little bit higher or lower than that. Really depends on a few factors. But one of the biggest things is deed transfer tax. So in most municipalities in Nova Scotia, it's 1.5% of the purchase price. That's going to make up the majority of your closing costs. Across Canada, that varies. You know, maybe that's 1/4%, 0.5%. Some municipalities don't even have deed transfer tax. Maybe it's as high as 2%, you know, in some places as well. So that's going to vary amongst provinces. Legal costs is another big one. It's going to be pretty similar amongst provinces, probably somewhere between $1,500 to $3,000 typically. I mean, maybe it can vary slightly, but I think in comparison to the deed transfer tax, it's relatively minimal. And then you have adjustments for property tax, which again are going to be pretty standard. Most municipalities bill twice a year. So that'll be pretty standard. And the other big thing too is adjustments on the property. I think specifically in Nova Scotia, we have a lot of homes that are oil heated. So a lot of the times what the seller will do is fill the tank full of oil because you know how big the tank is. Let's say it's 1,000 liters and they can calculate the cost of that oil. And then you have to buy a full tank of oil on closing. So, you know, the oil is $1.50 a liter and there's 1,000 liters, you're gonna have to come up with $1,500. Other provinces, like especially Ontario, like they're not very reliant on oil. There's a lot of natural gas instead, so wouldn't typically run into the same thing unless you know you had like a propane tank on site or something.
Yeah, that's really good to know about those closing costs. And if people want a little hot tip, I'm pretty sure I just sold my house in Halifax, and I'm pretty sure Patterson Law charged me like I think it's like $900 or $800 for my legal fees. So you might want to check out Patterson Law. They might have some pretty competitive rates there on the legal fees side. And the fourth critical thing that people need to know is the spring rush. Alex, everyone says that the springtime is the best time to buy and sell a home if you talk to realtors. But do you agree with that from the mortgage broker side? Not trying to, sell homes, you're just facilitating the transaction.
I'll say this, a lot of inventory hits the market in the spring, especially in Nova Scotia, and I'm sure this is common across Canada because of the winter. So a lot of the times, like right now, where we would be in a slower season for purchases and sales, because a lot of the times, if you're selling and you're buying a new home, you know, a lot of people don't want to do it in the winter. You got the holidays coming up. You know, once you get into the holidays, you just kind of want to be settled, and then it's January, and you know, a lot of people don't like moving in the winter. And so there are less homes for sale in January and February, and you definitely see a lot more listings. Is it the best time to buy? You know what? I don't think so. I think, you know, maybe in the summer is a good time to buy. I think that's kind of when you're getting more of your peak listings. I think any time I think between March and probably October is a good time to buy. But the spring rush is definitely just a bunch of listings hitting the market in March because of all the people sitting on the homes in the wintertime. Plus, plus homes show way better. I mean, if you're looking at a home in the wintertime and there's snow everywhere, you're on a lake or something, right? You can't visualize it. You know, it looks pretty drab and you know it's just gray and white. You see that same home in June where the trees are in full color, the grass is green, the water's blue. It completely changes your perspective. So that's going to fetch a higher dollar as well. So maybe more deals are to be had in the winter months for the homes that are available, and those are usually motivated sellers that need to sell that home as well. So that's why they're still on the market. And maybe you're paying more of a premium in the spring and summer, but it's I think it's just part of the cycle.
If you had to choose one neighborhood in Halifax to live in, where would you be buying a house in 2026? What's your favorite one?
This is like the fixed or variable rate mortgage better? Because it all depends. I mean, it really all depends. Do you have kids that are young that you need to be near a great school, and subdivision community? Maybe that's like Portland Estates, in Dartmouth. Maybe you want to be closer to all the action downtown and you don't want to pay the prices of the south end. Maybe that's the north end, which is up and coming as well. So I think the beautiful thing about Halifax is there are so many different areas that are diverse that have their own things to offer, from multi-million dollar homes on the ocean in the south end that are very luxurious to maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes outside of town if you want to be a little bit more, remote in nature. Maybe you're looking at, Fall River, Porter's Lake, Hammond's Plains. So there's a lot to offer at different price points that can offer very different things, from having a nice wooded area to being on a freshwater lake to being on the ocean. And I think that's the beauty of what Halifax and Nova Scotia as a whole has to offer.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think it's like such a good point to make, especially coming from places like you and I both grew up in Ontario, and having spent a decent amount of time in the GTA where like everywhere is kind of the same. You don't get that in Halifax. In Halifax, you have so much diversity in these neighborhoods, and you really do have something for everyone, which I really personally love about the city.
Mhm.
So the fifth critical thing that people need to know before buying a home in Halifax is, does it matter who you get your mortgage from? Because so many people that I've met, they think, oh, I'm just going to go to the bank where I have my checking account and get a mortgage from them. But what are they missing out on?
Yeah, it does matter. The biggest thing is if you go to the bank, they can only offer the bank's products, and that's an employee of the bank. The nice thing with us is we can search around and there's lots of different options, but it's beyond the rate, it's the terms. And it's about having that deeper conversation and about having that expert advice about where you're trying to go, what you're looking to do. Because sometimes the bank is the best option, sometimes it's not. We deal with the banks, and I'm not going to put the banks down. Some of the banks have great rates at sometimes, and sometimes they have products that no one else can offer. So a lot of the times, someone doing a refinance, for example, and they want to have $200,000 available on a home equity line of credit. It's a great opportunity for a bank. Banks offer home equity lines of credit, and they do it well. Um, maybe someone wants to have a fixed rate mortgage and they're unsure if they're going to sell it over the next 5-year term, but they still want to have fixed. Well, we'll put them with a mortgage only lender, what we would call a monoline lender, because the penalty is significantly lower than what a bank would charge on a fixed rate mortgage. The interest rate differential calculation is completely different. So that's what we do, is we have that deeper conversation. We really find out, like, what's the end here? Ask those important questions. What are you planning to do in the future? Are you looking to live in this property for a year, turn it into a rental, and then get something bigger and put 5% down on that? So we ask those key questions, and then we find out not only what lender's going to have the best rate, but what lender's going to have the best terms and suit what you're looking to do the best.
And if you need help finding a mortgage and getting your dream home, you can use the link down below to get started with Alex Lavender and his services as a mortgage broker. And if you have any questions on buying a house in Halifax or the mortgage process, then let us know in the comments on this video so we can create new content on this YouTube channel for you to learn from and get the best mortgages for yourself. So subscribe to Alex Lavender on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.